Annenberg Media.
Against the backdrop of our daily life, one of our most common worries, which plays fearfully on our imagination, is that we or someone we love might die suddenly. When that fear is realized, all at once, our familiar world is ruptured.
A jetliner is flying 35,000 feet up in the air, explodes, falls to the ground, 100 people die. A federal building explodes, tragedy, suffering, people dying. In situations like this, each person has a private grief and loss. When the survivors can talk, they say, that was my mother, that was my child. But there's some deaths that reach all of us, not just the person who is immediately involved. We feel as if a hole has been blown in our lives, as if the sky has fallen down upon us, where the enormity of the death is such that we have to respond as a whole, all of us together.
The terrorist bomb that destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City still resonates in the hearts and minds of many people. Diane Leonard's husband, Don, was working at the Federal Building on the day of the bombing.
My husband, Don, was an agent with the Secret Service. He had been with them for over 24 years. On the day of the bombing, I called home, and our 3 boys were here, and they told me that Don was one of the missing. I was anxious for information, so I had the radio on, and I was switching it from station to station. And then I finally got a station that was talking about Oklahoma City, and they said they were bringing in 200 body bags.
The dead numbered 168. For several days, rescue efforts continued, and Diane Leonard waited for news of Dawn.
My youngest was on the front porch, and he walked in with a horrified look on his face. He said 4 suits are coming up the driveway. It doesn't. So they came in, and they sat us down, and they told us. I asked about the damage, and nobody wanted to say anything. They just kind of looked at each other. Finally, one did say that his upper body was crushed. We got to the funeral home. We went in the room where he was. The boys were with me, and they had his hands out of the body bag. That was all the boys wanted to see. And they left. But I told the funeral director that I had to see my husband. He turned pale, and his lip was quivering, I remember. And I remember saying, "I'm really sorry, I don't mean to be trouble, but I just have to see my husband." And he said he would unzip it very slowly, and whenever I wanted him to stop, just to let him know. And he unzipped it very, very slowly, but I didn't have him stop, so I did see my husband and spent time with him by myself and was able to say things that I wanted to say, and I really wouldn't take anything for that opportunity. When you lose someone suddenly, it's totally unexpectedly. What I found is that you don't stop loving that person. You don't just turn it off. And I also found when I viewed him that when you love someone, you love them from the inside out. There's an emptiness that is there that I've never experienced before. And I feel kind of like my heart looks like the building. There's a hole that can't be fixed.
The ruins of the Alfred P. Murrah Building were demolished. The site is a touchstone for people who experienced an event so shocking that it seemed unreal at the time. It has become a symbol of renewal, but also of commemoration. The fence around the building is now a shrine to the memory of those who died. People from across the United States and around the world leave mementos and tokens of commemoration at the fence. Several times a year, people from Oklahoma City collect and save these items for a museum they are planning to open. Professor Howard Stein, a writer and psychologist who lives in Oklahoma City, has both a professional and an insider's view of the impact of the tragedy.
A question that all of us are left with is, what can the Oklahoma City bombing teach us about how people deal with death? Is it unique? How unique is it? What can it teach us about something that's universal? My own impression is that with the pressure toward closure, with the pressure toward getting on with life, what it teaches us is that very often cultures heal by forming a thick scab over a festering wound, and the wound continues to fester, and the scab is mistaken by everybody who want to mistake it for healing. I think that is one of the unfortunate lessons about this. And so that what in fact has happened is that a lot of people insist to themselves and enforce it to others, whether in families or in workplaces, get on with it, get on with life, suck it up. You didn't lose a husband, you didn't lose a wife, or if you did, it's 2.5 years ago, it's time to move on. The problem of it's time, it is, of course it's time to move on. I mean, one of the great virtues of prairie life is the work and frontier ethic of the ability to move on. But what 100 years of psychological theory and therapy have taught us is if people move prematurely on, they are stuck like bound and gagged to a rubber band. They only move as far on as the elasticity will allow them, and it'll pull them right back to the traumatic place.
We expect planes to keep sailing through. We hope they will. We expect buildings to stand. We expect when we say goodbye to somebody in the morning, we're going to see them in the afternoon. It's the ripping a hole in our illusion that life will continue to go on. It's such a shock to our realization that you can't count upon death. Death is not really playing a game with us. Death is not necessarily going to wait until we've had a long life and used it up and saying, well, I'm ready to go now. Death plays hardball.
For much of Western history, dying suddenly was utterly terrifying. It was the worst possible thing that could happen. For spiritual reasons, many people believed that to die before you had a chance to make your peace with your Maker was a ticket to hell. But also for very practical reasons. In an era before social insurance, before life insurance, before Social Security, to die without having a chance to get your affairs in order might mean that all your children and spouse would wind up in the poorhouse or on the street. The sense in which dying suddenly in your sleep is looked upon as a good thing, far preferable to a long, drawn-out death in modern culture, was almost incomprehensible to many people in the past. Dying without a chance to come to terms with your death was seen as terrifying. Today, sudden, unexpected deaths are often the result of technology.
Accidents can present death in its most random and brutal form. Emergency workers encounter people who are experiencing their worst fears. Don Reed has been an ambulance paramedic for 17 years. He is often the first to arrive at the scene of an accident.
I may find a situation where I'm going to be the last person that this person sees or is with before they die. We attended one call where a woman was babysitting several children. She was taking them to a park, and a dump truck was coming down a hill and was basically not able to stop in time. She pushed the children out of the way and got struck by the dump truck. She was not killed by the dump truck and was underneath the vehicle. This creates a conflict in itself, because when you get this person out, their injuries are such that you know they're going to be fatal. But the person is still conscious, and fortunately, the patient did me a favor in that they never asked, were they going to die? They asked, were the children okay? What struck me about this was that I actually felt that they had done me the favor of not putting me in the position to have to face that reality of their death, and was able to compensate them by saying that they did something good, that the children were safe, that their sacrifice has actually saved lives. So that even if they're thinking themselves that they're going to die, which seemed to be the unspoken idea on this call, at least I was able to continue treatment and provide this patient with hopefully some sense of relief before the injuries became fatal. So you don't want to take away their sense of hope. So you keep telling them that you're going to do what you can for them, that you're going to try to get them out, that you're going to be getting them to the hospital as soon as possible. you realize that these are everyday situation that at any time this could be happening. It's hard not to realize that this person has family at home. You can't help but always have a piece of that after each call as well. And I guess there's some solace that by saying, I have a job to perform each time I'm on these calls, is sort of the crutch that we use to be able to continue on each time.
For those who grieve, among the most bewildering forms of sudden death is suicide.
The steps towards suicide for young and old people, older people, is long and measured. The suicide may be a sudden death, but the workings toward it have gone on for a long time. And many people never reach the point where they actually attempt suicide. They've had the anxieties, the doubts, the worries, the fears, the angers, but they found another way. But when a person has finally reached suicide, it's all because they've tried everything else that they can think of. Nevertheless, there may be one thing more that they haven't.
Laurie Dover and her husband Bill were together for 12 years.
My husband was a very wise man, in my opinion, and very devoted to myself and my daughter. I met Bill when I was 28 years old, and my daughter was just turning 3. And I guess what I really liked about him, that he was so warm and charming. And he was, I think, the most sensitive and caring person I've ever met in my life.
Bill suffered from depression for most of his adult life. 6 years ago, after he'd been released from hospital against Laurie's advice, she discovered the scene of his suicide.
I felt him and he was warm, so I thought that I'd gotten there in time. And there was blood around, and I think I was pounding his chest. I was trying to attempt to start CPR. Police arrived. And, what I clearly remember is being pulled away from my husband because I was holding on to him. And I didn't think they understood that he was alive. He wasn't, but I wanted them to know that he was alive. And so I was screaming at them to allow me to keep doing what I was doing, which I thought I was reviving him. Well, they obviously knew he was not alive. So I remember the police pulling me, and I was fighting with them, and that they restrained me on the ground, which is not the right thing. And it's not that it's not the right thing. It wasn't helpful for me to be held down and have people on top of you as if you're doing something wrong. The first time that I remember feeling the guilt was talking to the funeral director, and he brought up suicide and how were the arrangements were going to be made because it was a suicide. And so I was confronted with the issue less than 24 hours later. And I had no answers for him. And I felt the guilt that he was saying, well, how did you let this happen?
But even if we know the medical cause of death, the question of meaning is much, much bigger. So why should this person have died? Why should this person have died? And we ask this question when deaths surprise us. We didn't expect this person to die. Why should this person die now? And we ask this question when the death seems to us to be senseless, meaningless, or unfair.
I really didn't think I wanted to go on initially. I saw no purpose to living, because initially for the first 3 months I didn't feel that I was capable of doing very much. I very rarely got dressed. I very rarely left the house. I didn't answer the phone. I wouldn't allow any music on. I wouldn't allow any noise in the house. It was a very confined situation, and I was angry at everybody, especially myself. And I came to terms with that I had to get out of this rut and do something. And slowly, I began dealing with the problems that needed dealing with. And I think that's where the strength comes from, that I could not continue to feel sorry for myself and mourn.
Laurie joined a group of people bereaved by suicide and went on to become a counselor herself.
I felt I was in a very fortunate position to, one, have recovered enough to be able to do this, which really means that you have found inner peace about suicide, that you have come to terms with death, and you've come to terms with allowing yourself life.
Laurie had been a painter, but stopped after Bill's death. When she resumed painting, it helped her to regain emotional stability.
Finding the self, finding who you are at that moment, wherever you're at that time. It's a mix of living in the here and now and trying to hang on with some of the memories. And I think for me, holding on to the memories meant holding on to the good parts, because you can't throw everything out. The ending is not significant. It's just an ending. It doesn't have to be the summary of everything that happened with that person, so that I can revisit Bill, and I can tell him in the here and now what's going on, and I can also remember such good times, because it isn't all blackness. You have a life with that person. You had a life with that person, and you can hold on to it. You can find a comfortable place to put that in your heart, and with that you grow. I grew, and I got to be a very different person. I can say that I'm not the same person. I don't think that I could go through something like this and honestly say that I was able to go back and be Laurie from then. It's a new person, and the good news for me is that I wouldn't have been who I am today. And I happen to like where I am today, and I wouldn't have met the people in my life who I've met. It's been a bonus. It's been a wonderful, sad trip.
Before the bombing, I felt so safe and secure. I always had such faith that Don would take care of me and could take care of me in any instance. I used to tell people we could be thrown out in the woods and with no food or lodging, and Don could manage to take care of us. I felt totally safe. And now that safety net is gone, and I think I don't care about being safe anymore. It's like it doesn't matter anymore. I don't fear death like I did before the bombing. We were very close, and last thing I said to him and that he said to me was, "I love you."
This marble slab, a fitting shrine, shrapnel of a bomb that shook a prairie morning in its spring. This marble slab, so polished we can see in its glaze our own reflection of the so many dead and wounded we remember and cannot forget. This marble slab, do not look too closely, lest you see its oneness is pieced from four, its brokenness ours. This marble slab, if it could speak, would speak in tears, not stone, and weep till every crack was healed.
Annenberg Media. For information about this and other Annenberg Media programs, call 1-800-LEARNER and visit us at www.learner.org.